Hi, everyone. Aloha and welcome, welcome. We're just going to let everyone take maybe a couple of seconds to get your audio on. We have some people still joining from the waiting room. While we're waiting for everybody to join in, just if you could just uh let me know where you're zooming in from. Hey, Allison. Boy, it's been a long time no see. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. And everybody else. It seems like it's been a minute since we were all together on a Zoom call. Hi, Mark. Hi, Pamela. Welcome, everybody. Again, it's so great to see you folks. Just letting everybody get in. All righty. Hi, Prachi. Chelsea, hi. Margaret, Nikki. Oh, it's so lovely to see you folks. Thanks for joining. All righty, got a couple more coming in. Hi, Dawn. Aloha, Scott. All righty. Well, looks like most everybody's in, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome. Again, it's just so great to see you folks. It feels like it's been a minute since we were all together. This is a first installation or installment of a two-part series, really looking at data and storytelling. And so just want to welcome you. But before we get started, we're going to go through the disclaimer. This presentation was produced under the U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises Incorporated. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, let's move on to our agenda. This session is going to be really, wait, why did this move here? Sorry, one moment. There we go. Hold on one second. Okay. Everything just moved on my screen. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be a workshop. So there's going to be some of me talking, but then we're going to break out into breakout rooms and do some actual work. I think my team here will put in a worksheet that was both sent to you with a reminder for today's session. So we'll include both the Word document and a PDF. And so this is going to be some of the work we'll be going through, but it's also a tool you can take and use for other activities. And so we're going to be really talking about the process of developing your story. First piece, and going through the process, we're going to break down some different aspects of it around engaging a team, identifying your impact measures, and data storytelling. So normally you don't really think of data and storytelling going together. And so what I wanted to do was really sort of base this idea of storytelling on our ancestral practices. What you see up on the screen is actually part of a over 2,000 line genealogical chant composed for a chief of Hawaii. This chant was really a chant that connected this particular chief to actually the beginning of time, to the first. It's sometimes we call it in Hawaiian, we call it our origin chant, but it really connects this chief or ali'i to the very beginning and the creation of life and light and all of the environmental aspects. And so this is one part of that. And I'm sure I picked this part because I know many of you have seen the movie Moana. And in Moana, the hero is Maui. And so Maui is a story that is shared throughout the Pacific. It's not just a Hawaiian story, but many Pacific Islanders, and I think you can see that in Moana, have a story of Maui. For Hawaiians, what we've done is we have deconstructed this part of the chant and have looked at Maui and realized that Maui was really a change maker. And so I just wanted to share one small part of a story example from my culture. The other thing is I found some really amazing other stories, and I know you guys have other stories. So if you have connections to stories that maybe come from your people or your community, and you have access to those stories, go ahead and throw that in the chat, those links to the chat, because I think we just want to share all of the amazing stories that we have. Because we're sort of natural storytellers. And as I look across us as Native people, I looked at like the different ways we use stories. Again, one of them, they range from both being sacred to historical. They oftentimes center on the social and political and cultural aspects. They also, not just cultural aspects, but they also, for many times are how would you say, like data and observation of the environment and environmental phenomenon enclosed and embodied in our stories. They can be entertaining and even humorous. They can recount personal, family, and community or national experiences. Again, these stories are owned by specific clans or families and can only be told by members of those groups. Sometimes I know there are shared stories, like for example, that Kumulipo story that I shared with you, that are really meant to be conveyors of knowledge that are passed down from generation to generation. And like it says right there, others are open for anyone to share. And also the stories reflect the perceptions, relationships, beliefs, and attitudes of a particular people. And so it's a really important skill set that sometimes we don't necessarily identify or acknowledge in our current work. So I want to sort of make the connection between our ancestral practice of storytelling and the ways that we use it to the stories that you tell about your organization. Sometimes we feel like we're not like, we don't have the capacity or the skill set to be able to tell our story of our organization or to be able to communicate, whether it's an elevator pitch or presenting in front of a board or stakeholders, or even some people who might want to partner and provide resources. But you do have that capacity. It is an ancestral skill set. We just need to harness it that way. And so what is really the purpose of your story as we're talking about your organization? And really the purpose is for your organization to create a story that's authentically conveys the unique journey, values, and impact of your community-driven initiatives. By crafting a compelling narrative, we aim to both engage and inspire, right? We want to connect emotionally with your audience and foster a deep understanding and appreciation of your mission. Your story helps you to build trust and credibility. It allows you to showcase the trend and be transparent and gain and build your integrity within your community, really by showing the effectiveness of your programs. And sometimes not just maybe as being transparent is not to just talk about the effectiveness, but also the challenges you face in actually accomplishing your mission and hitting your outcomes. You also want to really utilize the stories to amplify your cultural heritage, highlighting the significance of your cultural practices, traditions, languages that are really shaping your community's identity and resilience. One of the things, I'll just get on my soapbox for a little bit. One other thing I'd like to add to that is that, really amplifying the contribution your culture and our cultures make to areas that are not sort of like traditionally thought of. So a lot of times people think about, like, again, language, which is really important, but also the impact our cultural practices make on larger, more global issues such as climate change, such as working with, how do we work with people across, communities and beliefs. We have all those skill sets embedded, and those are the things you're working in your organization, in your grant program, to highlight, to really bring the value of our people to the forefront. And that's one thing you can do with your story. The other thing to do that is really important about your story is that it can demonstrate impact, clearly articulating the positive changes and benefits that your projects bring to the individuals and community as a whole. And oftentimes we sort of begin with, definitely, the community and the individuals, the families, and the larger community that we're working with. But, sometimes our stories can go even a step further to really talk about the value, again, that it brings to the broader community. Oftentimes I've seen in writing, like, really, when we improve Native communities, we're not just improving the community, we're the Native people, we're improving the community as a whole. So when Native people do well, everyone does well. And so that's another way you can utilize these stories, your story. The other one is to really talk about securing ongoing support. What we share about bringing in supporters, partners, and stakeholders to really invest in your mission, to ensure sustainability of your program, as well as the continued growth and success. Always remember that your story serves as a powerful tool to communicate really the heart and soul of your organization, fostering stronger relationships, as well as driving collective action towards a brighter future for our community. And this is really where, you take sort of what you may think is dry data and utilize it to really bring in emotion and connectedness into your story, and making that data alive and personal and individual. The powers of story is really about engaging your community in a broad sort of sense into your organization, and helps to engage them in an emotional level, building strong connection that differentiates your organization from others. And so let's jump into sort of the process that we're going to be going through over the next 2 sessions of this series. One of the things is really around engaging teams. Now, I'm sure if you look at this, with all of the work that you're doing, whether it's like looking at continuous improvement, or starting a charter school, or maybe getting accreditation for your post-secondary or your school program, you can see similarities in the process. And so I don't encourage you to like add this as another, like a whole nother separate, but look at the systems you have in place and maybe start to like integrate the story development into other processes that are similar to what I'm sharing with you right now. And that's really why I wanted to sort of pull this out, because I'm sure you are engaged in other processes that are similar. And so I'm not advocating, again, like I said, whole nother separate piece of work. Look at how you can sort of embed this into the systems that are similar to this as well. And I'm going to just take a pause for the cause and see what's going on in the chat. Awesome. Again, like in the storytelling, if you have access to links of stories that maybe you created in your own organization that you'd love to share, we'd love to see those samples. But let's jump right into the process. And so one of them is to engage a team. Now, again, you may have this set up already. You may have a board, or you may have a tribal members that come together, executive leadership groups, also program staff, your development team. If you have a communications team, engaging your participants, now again, that can be used to their families as well as maybe community, and then volunteers and supporters, community leaders, and partners, as well as maybe you are also working with consultants. I know several of you actually contract with a consultant to be able to look through your data and be able to provide reports. If you are, if you do have a consultant that does that, then you definitely want to make sure that they are in the loop and they are part of this team, as well as maybe any, like I said, evaluation or data specialist. So let's go ahead and look at what are the potential roles and contributions of this team. And I really wanted to put this here because I know not everybody has like all of these, like has a communication team and a program, a development team, and it has all of these like different aspects within your organization. However, there may be people that are doing that work or that can fill, that are doing these roles and then can contribute, but maybe it's just your program director that kind of does it all, or maybe it's shared with your program director and your principal or your superintendent. And so I wanted to be able to provide not just the title or the name of the person or the role, but also the roles and in this team, as well as their contribution. I'm not going to go through all of this because we do have an activity that does have a worksheet. If we could pop that up, it would be great. Again, just to, again, share, I would want to encourage you both. There is a Word document and a PDF document for you to look at. So we're gonna, again, wanted to make this really workshopy. And so we're gonna break out into breakout rooms. And let me just check. We got a bunch of people. So I'm gonna create, let's see. We're gonna create about, let's say, 9 breakout rooms. Is that right? 9 breakout rooms? Yeah, 9 breakout rooms. And then you folks are going to work on this. I was going to have our TA team sort of be in designated rooms, but because there's so many of them, we're just going to rotate through the rooms. But really, I wanted you to take a couple moments to just look at the worksheet, think it through, just work on your own, and then start to have discussions about like what kind of teams do you already have in place, or who else would you be including on this team to really help you develop your story of your organization. And so let me go ahead and make those breakout rooms. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, great. Everybody's coming back. Check the breakout. Welcome back, everybody. Alrighty. I hope that was some really great conversation. I heard some really interesting things going on. I was wondering if anybody wanted to maybe, we'll take maybe 3 people who want to share like an aha moment or something you learned from one of your peers. Just come off of mute and you can go ahead and share.
Hi, Rita Locklear.
Hi, Rita.
I think the years of experience make a big difference in this.
Mm, yeah.
The longer you work with it, the more you have access to people who can help share your story.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were discussing the things, when you look back, you've got people in your school districts that can share things with you, and your office, your folks that are working in your office, the administrators, there's certain ones you could call on.
Yeah.
And then we've built relationships over the years with parents that will see their children, and then the next child comes along. So over the years, we get a chance to meet some really good parents, and I know that they would be very effective in helping us share that story.
Yeah. That's an amazing point, that you made. Like, it's not just sort of bringing people to create the story, but also when you're doing that, they become the people who are your sort of your champions out there in the community, right? They can communicate to other parents and you know, other people within the community. And so really getting helping thinking strategically about who can like be a champion and a storyteller for you, as well as helping you develop that story. Great point. Hey, Allison, were you going to share?
Did
Oh,
you want me to share?
No, I saw your box went green, so
Oh, I was going to share my screen when we were in discussion because we were talking about gathering data points and going through our data storytelling, identifying key roles and contributors. And
yeah.
that is a thing that's on our action plan. We've got
Ah,
an action plan template, and we all say, who are our community partners? What are they going to be bringing to this, whatever we're doing, this project that we're doing? How do we contact them? How much time, effort they're going to be putting into it? And then the follow up with them, the feedback, all of that's a part of our action plan.
awesome.
And so I was going through this with Sky, and we were looking at, you know, what do we define as board members, tribal leadership? Because we were saying I have people that are on our board of education who are also tribal council members,
Mhm.
and one of them is the tribal administrator, and some of them are volunteers in our program for mentoring. And so they would actually be in multiple places on this data storytelling part one section
Yeah.
as we went through. So involving them, it's like, okay, I need you to put this hat on and give me your observation from this perspective. Now give me your observation from that perspective. And they're like, oh, okay, I gotta change gears and view it from a different point of view. So
Right.
you might be, what we were talking about, you might be engaging and connecting with people multiple times from different points of view about specific different data sets and different projects. So it was just finding out where their story will align, and you might come back to them repeatedly for
Mhm.
those inputs. Like if you go further into OIE's data story thing, we talk
Right.
about the actual what's it called, the actual words they say that I can't think of the words right now
Mhm.
in the data story thing. So we were just coming back to that. You're going to frame it as, this was our plan, here's what we did, here was what we checked on, our feedback, and here
Yeah.
were the results of it. So you can see the continuous improvement process
Yes.
through
Yes.
data storytelling. But that was what we talked about. We went really in depth. Sky had a lot of good observations. Yeah. And Sky, did you want to say anything?
I think you covered it pretty well. But I really did appreciate all of the insight that you had, given that I'm still relatively new in my team, and so I was just discussing with Allison that there is a multi level process that comes with just one person in your organization. They've
Right.
seen a few different perspectives in what they've seen, and so when it comes time to really collect that data and tell your group story, you might have to revisit those conversations a few times. And like Allison was saying, I really did appreciate that perspective of it, because I was like, where do I put this person? And I was like, well, I could
Yeah.
put them in a few different places actually, because a lot of our team does a few different roles within that one position that they have.
Mhm. Yeah. Awesome point. And again, I think it speaks back to, I love your idea, Allison. You already have an action plan, right? And so it's like, how do you embed other elements into that action plan so that you're getting, you know, you have these amazing partners that you're calling to the table. And you can call them, you can engage them in for different purposes. And instead of having them attend a whole bunch of other meetings or be in other groups. So that's really smart. Anyone else want to share? We'll take one more, like an aha, or maybe something you learned or something you thought, wow, that what they're doing is like super smart. I want to do that. Or even what I'm doing is super smart. I want to share that.
I was sharing in our group that this was so timely for us because we have just been going through sort of the similar like data telling stories
Mhm,
about our development of a tribal education
mhm.
department, and looking at all the key players. This really outlined it so nicely for us. And I
Awesome.
can't wait to share it for our planning team.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There's a lot of resources online in order for you to be able to do this. This is really like a skeleton version. And so again, I want to encourage you to look into this, but also really reflect on the storytelling practices of your people, even the construction of stories, and see if you can't, when you tell your story of your organization, maybe mimic that. And we're going to get into that in the second session of this series. But for example, like a lot of times, in my culture, stories start with a genealogy, a short genealogy. And so maybe, you know, when I write my organization story, I'm going to talk about the genealogy of the organization. Organizations have genealogy. They come from some place and they're going to somewhere. And they are products of what others, what our ancestors have laid down in the past. And so how do you talk about that? So really looking at your stories as an outline for when you build your stories. But one thing, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Thanks for participating. We're going to move on. And I wanted to talk about like identifying your impact measures. So one of the things you communicate through your stories is not just what your impact is, but what the need within the community is, but definitely your impact measures. Now, I know you folks have impact measures because we get to see those in your APRs. Now, they may be a smaller version of maybe a larger impact measure that your organization is going for, and maybe what we see in your APRs, whether it's your GEPRA or your project objectives, are maybe milestones that get you to your actually organization-wide impact measures. But I know you folks all have these, because again, like I said, at a bare minimum, we get to get a peek of that through your APRs. And so the purpose of really identifying your organization's impact measures is to provide a clear and quantifiable foundation for your story, ensuring it effectively communicates the benefits and successes of your initiatives. This can include demonstrating accountability. So, Siri, be quiet. Siri's talking to me. To show our supporters and your stakeholders that their support directly contributes to meaningful outcomes. And again, it helps to foster trust and transparency. Really highlighting your achievements, showcase the real world impacts that your projects are making. And I know, like when you talk about your students, whether they are in kindergarten or in post-secondary, the effects that you're having on families, try to collect that information. Also, they help to really strengthen your narrative of having evidence that sort of speaks to the story that you're sharing and making it more compelling and credible. And also aligning that with your supporters' interests. And so a lot of times, the reason why supporters come to your organization and either volunteer or provide, you know, a wide array of supports is because what you're doing connects to something that they value. And so utilizing your impact measures to really communicate that and connect to your communities and people who might want to support you, their values and interests. Also, they can help guide your efforts. And so using, again, your impact measures to assess progress. And Allison had talked about continuous improvement, like utilizing those measures to always progress. The story is not just an external story, it's also an internal story that you're telling amongst your staff and your participants. And so really being able to engage everyone in collecting and being mindful of measures, and also wanting to continuously improve to really help inform your future strategies and continue to grow your efforts within your community. And so by integrating your impact measures into your organization story, you can really craft a powerful narrative that inspires and engages and drives continued support and investment in your mission. Now, one of the ways that you begin to identify your measures is to really look at what are what's happening within your community. And so this is just one sort of way you can do that. I'm sure many of you have done this already, so I'm not going to like belabor it, but it's really talking about a data walk. And I guess if you could raise your hands, let me know if you've done this. If you, it's like you go into a room and you involve like all those stakeholders, and you basically select out different data sets that are coming from your community. It can be through maybe the US Census, maybe you have statewide or community, maybe you have tribal data that you can utilize. Maybe you have also bring to the table your own program data, and then you get all your stakeholders to look at these data and provide input and have them see what the data is telling you. And so normally it's like in a room with the data on posters all around the room, and you break people up into small groups and they sort of walk through the data and provide their input. The reason why you do this in the process of developing your own impact measures is it helps to promote transparency. It encourages collaboration. Again, it brings people on at the very beginning when you really are trying to carve out what success looks like for you. That helps to enhance understanding both internally as well as externally, drive informed decision-making, as well as identifying gaps and opportunities. And then, of course, building capacity within your organization, but also the community. I've seen a lot of times where, parents, even students, potential shareholders, where like you invite maybe your legislator, maybe you're inviting some businesses that are really supportive in your community to really be a part of it. And that's how do you bring people in very early on. Part of this process of doing a data walk is really the data and how you are selecting the data. I've seen some, and I know when I'm talking about data and I'm talking about all these things being posted on the board, a lot of times we're thinking about very like your hard data, like graphs and some things that are quantifiable, but you can also share your qualitative data. So for example, I've been at a data walk where they had a youth who was videotaped that shared the story and the impact of what their life was and what the impact of the program was. And so it doesn't just have to be quantitative data. It can also include qualitative data. And so when you're thinking about the types of data that you want to look at during your data walk, you want to make sure that you're selecting data that is relevant. Again, you have in mind, you have your mission, you have sort of like this idea of the need and how you want to address it. So if I was focused on like immersion education, one of the data points I might bring to the data walk is like how many, maybe I did a survey on how many people are interested in immersion language education. Maybe what benefits, some statistics around the benefits and the academic achievement of students that are in immersion programs versus students who are not in immersion programs. And so it's all sort of connected to my program. I may or may not bring in, if I was doing an example of language, I may or may not bring in data related to maybe some water quality, for example. That would not be relevant data to what the program I would be working on. And so again, looking at the relevance of the data. And then like I said, you can bring in a variety of data types, both quantitative and qualitative. And really, when it comes to the qualitative data, think creatively about it. Think about if your stakeholders who are going to be involved in it are primarily Native people, but even if it's just like a mix of people, think about that community and the culture of the community and what best ways it is to communicate and share both quantitative and qualitative data and adjust it to that. You also want to make sure that the data that you're looking at has some timeliness, right? And so if it's 2024, I may not be looking back at data from like 1990, and even nowadays, 2000, right? That might be too many years away. And particularly now, I think we are trying to find data, and I want to say post-pandemic, right? I mean, because lots of things changed between prior to the pandemic and then after the pandemic. And so sometimes you really want to look at whether, depending on your issue and your program, what may have changed during and after the pandemic. Also, you want to make sure that the data you're providing is really clear and comprehensible. And so that may require you to take some like large data and break it down visually so that it's easier to digest. And so it may be taking like a large graph that has like all like across the nation and trying to like scale it down to maybe one that is nation and another one that is more maybe state or local, and providing that in order for people to comprehend. Also make sure that it's representative, that it is really representing your community, and that try to look for, and this is a little hard, try to avoid data that is biased or does not capture the full picture. That one really takes some research and really sort of diving into the data. Also, you want to connect it to impact measures and making sure that the data is available as well as feasible. And so those are sort of the things you want to look at when you're thinking about the data and what data you want to select. All right, so we're back into our worksheets. We're going to break back into our breakout rooms, and we're going to take about 10 minutes to sort of walk through this. I got a whole bunch of stuff more to go, and we're almost finished, so I want to get you through this, but I want to make sure we're providing time for you to talk and work through this. So I'm going to break you out. You can, again, really, use this. Oh, sorry. Use this worksheet to really identify and locate both qualitative and quantitative data that you might have on hand. And this is a really key piece, because when we come back in the second session, we're really going to dive into how do we bring that data into the actual story. And so I want to make sure that you have some time to look at this. So let's go ahead and get out into breakout rooms. And I'm going to open all the rooms. There you go. And we'll see you in about, let's say 7 to 10 minutes. All righty. Everybody's coming back. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome back, everyone. So again, I know many of you have a OIE grant. I'm sure you are working either as a TEA or you're working within a university or a school system. I'm sure you have your impact measures that either are reflected through your strategic plan or program performance indicators. Like I said, I know you have your grant objectives, and also if you're gone through accreditation, you also have your accreditation outcomes. And so while you may not need to necessarily do a data walk in order to begin to develop your impact measures, it is a process I wanted to share that you can bring your community along. Even if you're looking at the data that's coming out from any of these sources that are some of your foundational sources for where you articulate your impact measures, and pulling out your data as it relates to your own impact measures is a really great activity to bring everybody on board. But now we want to kind of get into like, okay, Oleni, you were talking about data and storytelling, like where are we getting to like the storytelling place? So I have some examples of how you can integrate data into your storytelling, and we're going to go through some of those. And so this is an example of, well, this isn't a factoid story. So really what it is you're taking large data sets and you find really the most interesting piece of information in that large data set that would really captivate your reader or the person you're trying to engage. whether it's an outlier or it's deviating from the norm, or maybe it's the most prevalent data point, these individual details can really create some fascination and surprise. And so here's an example around this, what a particular data point that sort of pops out of a larger set of data. And this allows you to really uncover and further tell your story. And so here's an example of how that one data point can be used within the context of developing a story. And so you really see at the top how that data is being used to tell this particular story. Now, this is not the entirety, it's just maybe a couple of paragraphs built around this actual data set. Another way that you can utilize data is called this interactive story. And this really looks at when two aspects of your data seem to be related. You can use those two aspects to tell a story of how they interact. If one measure goes up and the other goes up too, there's an interaction. Maybe one measure is going down and the other one goes down as well. That's another sort of example of an interaction. In other cases, they may interact in opposites, right? One goes up and the other one goes down. You want to be careful not to guess about the reasons for the interaction, but noticing the relationship itself can be a really good story. So here is this example of the data. Students who have teachers who are highly proficient in native language are 75% more likely to be at grade level language proficiency. And so what does that look like when I'm telling a story? And so I can show here that recent data show that students, and here's the example, I won't read it, you guys can read it. And sort of some of the other data that was put together. Their expertise serves as an inspiration for students, encouraging them to set ambitious goals and persevere in language learning. Again, talking about embedding that data within the story of your program. Another way to use data is comparison. And so this is when you are comparing between sections of your data. That can be a really good way to find a story to tell. So again, as you're reviewing and analyzing your data, looking for those stories that you can tell. And I know you do that sort of naturally as you're looking at data, things sort of pop out and you're like, oh, wow, really? And so this is how you can use those ahas that go off as you're looking at your data. Often one part of your data tells one story, but another part tells a totally different story. Or maybe they are similar, a smaller portion of your data that serves an example of an overall pattern. So here's an example of a data. Students attending language immersion schools in our district have a higher rate of school attendance by 20% than their peers not attending language immersion schools. If you are a NAL grantee, you know that this data example connects directly into your GEPRA. And so this is how you can use that data point to tell a story. You can go ahead and read that story. Again, it's connected to your program, and you are talking about your program and the importance of immersion and utilizing the data to sort of highlight that point. There's also a change story. And so people are really drawn to the concept of change over time. And so our experiences and perceptions are shaped by our interactions with the world as it evolves. So telling a story of change appeals to our curiosity about the factors that are driving these shifts, and also really help to recall some vivid experiences that we may have personally, but definitely are being communicated from maybe some of your program participants. And so here's an example of a data. So in the 2021 school year, students in grades K through 2 were below grade level in math. However, in the 2022-23 school year, the data showed that the same student cohort is scoring at grade level in math. And so how do we take that and make it about a change story? And so this is just a short, again, just really short, taking that data and adding another maybe sentence about what we did that really, what strategies we utilized that we think really added and created this change. And then our last one, which is my favorite, is a personal story. And so some stories are really interesting because they connect to real life. And I know a lot of us, as it relates to our storytelling skill, always want to bring in sort of that personal story and really personalizing the data in real life. And that is an amazing way to tell a story. So here is a data sample or an example. 97% of students who graduate from Native Language Immersion School have been admitted to college. And you can see that what we've done in this example is actually, take a student's name. Of course, we need to get their permission and talk about, utilize that data and talk about their own experience. As you can see, we're really utilizing the student's words as speaking from a student. And so if you can maybe collect I know a lot of you do surveys. And so in part of those surveys, you do ask your participants to, to write down their thoughts or what they experience. I know some of you also do feedback with your parent group. Those are just really great ways to collect their own quotes and their story, and then connecting that to data that you have is a very, very powerful tool and a very powerful story. So we are going to break out into breakout groups, go back to that worksheet, and really try to see if you can make if you have on the top of your head some facts or statistics or data that you have, and how you might want to use it in the different formats of stories that I just shared with you. Again, your entire story may utilize the different ways that I just went over. You may have 3 or 4 examples that I just shared with you integrated into your full story. But we want to just have you practice that. So we're going to break out into our breakout rooms again, and we'll have 7 minutes again for you to sort of play with this and really learn and share with each other. So I'm going to go out into the breakout rooms. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're nearing the end of this session. I was just wondering if anyone, maybe 2 people, wanted to jump on really fast and maybe share an aha, something you learned, something, you shared that you want to share with a larger group.
Hey there. I'll share group number 4. We were talking about this worksheet as being a tool that we can take back to our teams. And this was a nice, I think Drew said it best, like these are like nice, large, broad strokes, right? That we can then go later and unpack and chew on, and then see where we're sitting with our own storytelling and data points that we have thus far for our programming, or maybe our entire story as a whole for our organization, and look at these various, ways that we can have our data speak the story of, our indigenous ways, and also our requests that we have, especially centered with our families about what they want to see in their schools or their communities. And so I'm eager, because for NISN, for Naka Inspired Schools Network, this is really perfectly timed, because we're doing a lot of work around our mission-driven story cycles.
Awesome.
And so we can avoid this mission creep when it comes to like our partner schools. And how do we do that but still hold that authentic place of language and culture and land-based learning and healing and all of those core values that we hold dear to our mission.
Mhm.
I see this as a really another instrument to support our families and our communities, our organizations, to tell our own stories.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for this. This has been a
Yeah.
really, really, really fruitful and helpful session.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad. I'd love to hear, in the future as you work sort of that through, one of the things is the mission drift is a real thing, right? And so how do you work to put systems in place that sort of keep you focused on what you set out to do and to achieve. So it'd be lovely to hear back from you about all that work. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, I hope this was beneficial. I hope you got something out of it. Are there any questions? Okay, this is again, I think it was Jessica, this is a tool that can be used across your organization. You definitely want to embed it into something that's going on already. There's lots of information out there on the web in order to do this type of work and to begin to develop your story. We're going to be having the next part of this series coming up in October. So you do have some time to really collect your evidence, maybe think through some story elements that you want to, because when we get into that session, we're actually going to begin to draft your story or go maybe look at revising that story. So it's going to be really like workshop, and we want to come out with, if it's not a first draft, we want to at least come out with like a revision and something that you can go home and continue to work on in your organizations. Thanks, Casey, for putting up the end of the event poll. So we really look forward to seeing you again. Just our normal sort of standard. If you have any technical assistance need, you can contact us at our email, or you can also click on that link to get a coaching session with your TA team. Thank you, folks, for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope this was fruitful and helpful. And I know the conversations in those breakout rooms were really fruitful and really awesome. So thanks, you guys, for participating, and we'll see you next time. Aloha.